I have a short page. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a short speech. Wow, it's so good to be here again and to see so many familiar phrases. Remember my first talk here it was 2 years ago, pretty much the same time of the year. And I didn't recognize many of the faces. So it's always good to see Mark here. Mark was the first member of the Jewish community that I met with. I think it was not even a week after I assumed my responsibilities as the ambassador. It was January the 18th, 2022, exactly 6 days after I first arrived to Australia. And since then, we meet quite often. And it's really an opportunity, another opportunity to thank you for showing me around, making me better understand Australia. And of course, to see Jeremy and rabbis, Rabbi Kahan, I'm sure that there are others, Member of Parliament from Higgins, Michelle is here, David. Really, thank you all for having me. I want to share with you some thoughts. I didn't prepare a speech because I'm really looking forward for your questions and to have an exchange. But I would like to share with you that one of the third things that I did after I was appointed is to really listen to the good advices of some of my very capable predecessors. They told me two major things. The first one is that there is no better place than Australia to serve just before retirement. Well, the last 3 years were all but a preparation for my future retirement. And that's not to take anything from how great Australia and how great Australians are. The second thing that they shared with me, and really, wholeheartedly, how much they value the solidness of the foundation of Israel-Australia relationship. To be honest and open, I have today different perspectives about the bilateral relationship, and I have some real concern about the future of our bilateral relationship. Now, to make things clear, it did not start on October the 7th. When we were here 2 years ago, in October 2022, it was right after the government decision to reverse its recognition of West Jerusalem as the capital. And it was just before the United Nations General Assembly meetings, during which, out of the 18 resolutions that were tabled and which we perceived as anti-Israeli, the Australian government decided to shift or to change the way that historically and traditionally the Australian government voted. And then 2023, we had two major political developments. One of them is related to the government decision to change the way that they refer to the territories, from occupied territories to the occupied Palestinian territories. And then in mid-2023, if you all recall, the very loud state conference here in Victoria, and which ended in a way that we didn't expect, nor, were looking forward. And we also had in August 2023, the national conference, during which, in the end of the day, we were able to preserve the language that the Labour Party was used, on the question of the Palestinian state. I'm standing here today after nearly more than a year, not nearly, more than a year that we are fighting, that we are engaged in a war against the Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Houthis, extreme elements in Syria, extreme elements in Iraq. Officially, the war is known as the Swords of Iron, but as it was mentioned just a few days ago by a senior Israeli politician, this is the seven-front war. And it needs to be understood, the seven fronts war. It's not just about the war in Gaza, and I'm not sure whether you follow the news, but just during the last 24 hours, we lost 3 Israeli soldiers in northern Gaza from the Givati Brigade. And even though we pretty much accomplish the main military objectives that were set, and let me just refresh your memory. The first one was to eradicate the Hamas. The second one to dismantle the Hamas from its military capabilities. And the third one is to remove the threat that Hamas is posing on Israel. We are still having 101 Israelis, children, men, women, that are held by the Hamas in dark tunnels. We have clear indication that, and information that about 40 out of the 101 are no more alive. And honestly speaking, and it's not that I have intel information, I have my personal concerns about the well-being of the remaining hostages. And 2 months ago, we decided to go ahead and launch a military campaign in southern Lebanon, which is a directed, a local military activities. It took the Hezbollah by surprise. And by the way, in Israel, there were those who believe in, when we were attacked by the Hamas on October the 7th, and the day after, the Hezbollah started firing Katyusha rockets and other type of missiles towards Israel. So already in October, there were the ones in Israel who believed that this is about the time that we should respond, we should react to the Hezbollah, and we should do our utmost in order to remove the threat that they are posing. And it didn't take us by surprise. We always knew that the Hezbollah, as the Hamas did for so many years, are engaged in a process of rearming itself. We had our concerns about their missile capabilities. We knew about their precise guided missiles, arsenal of missiles. We knew about their UAVs. It's not that we were taken by surprise, but for a period of time, or in my view, for too many years, we believe that our deterrence will prevent or will make the Hezbollah reconsider their future actions, especially after the 2006 second war in Lebanon. And as it was mentioned, I was there in Lebanon in 1978 during the Litani operation, and in the 1982 I led a battalion of paratroopers when Israel decided that it's about time to uproot the PLO. At that time it was the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that we are fighting against. But it's not just about the Hamas and Hezbollah, it's also about the Houthis in northern Yemen, an area that I'm familiar with as my ancestors immigrated to Israel from northern Yemen. And it's also the extreme militia elements from both Syria and Iraq. And it's also the situation in the West Bank. Hi, Danny, good to see you. Good to see you. So in the West Bank, we are also facing some serious challenges as the Palestinian Islamic extremists and the Hamas are trying to set the West Bank in fire. There are no daily reports about it, but there are daily military activities in the West Bank as part of Israel's efforts really to extinguish the fire that is set by all these extreme elements. But on top of everything, it's very important to talk about Iran. The head of the snack is Iran. And while we are engaged in some sort of exchange with the Iranians, it's very important to remember that it is the Iranians that fund, equip, and train all these extreme elements. It's very important to remember that the Iranians are engaged in an ongoing efforts to enhance their regional hegemony. It's very important to remember that the Iranians are the one to try and destabilize the moderate Arab states such as the UAE, Bahrain. If I'll take you back to January 2022, it was the Iranians, or the Houthis, the Iranians proxy, that fired ballistic missiles from northern Yemen towards Saudi, as well as the UAE, and I can go on and on. So when Israel decided, and I'm not that sure that we all understand the essence and the meaning of the last Israeli actions in Iran. This is the first time in Israel history, at least the one that I'm familiar with, that we are launching a strike in such a scale in a third-tier country. Think about it. What does it mean about Israel's capabilities? What does it mean? What does it say about Israel's intelligence? And I'm not just talking about, the Russian old style of activities, shooting and hoping that one of the shells will hit the target. We're talking about a precise action, an action that hit the target, not in one place, not in a second place. Think about the distance. What does it mean in terms of refueling, in terms of the platforms that were used? And as it was clearly stated by the Chief of the General Staff and by Prime Minister Netanyahu, we didn't introduce all Israel's capabilities. We have other capabilities that if the Iranians will decide, as it looks like, to react, we have other means and other capabilities to respond. Talking about Iran, it's also very important to remember that while we are talking about the Houthis and the Hamas and the Hezbollah, the Iranians are still engaged in their efforts to acquire nuclear weapon capabilities. When I first started dealing with the Iranian portfolio, it was during my time in Washington. And I was assigned to follow the Iranians' nuclear program. And in 2005, 2006, just to refresh your memory, conversion is the first stage in the a nuclear program. It's the stage where you take the uranium, which is a solid material, and convert it into gas. That's the conversion stage before the enrichment. So in 2005 and 2006, conversion was a red line. The international community set a very clear red line to prevent the Iranians from acquiring conversion capabilities. Today, nobody is talking anymore about conversion. The Iranians pocket conversion. Today, everyone is talking about enrichment, which is a second and a very important stage in the nuclear program, which is all about changing the composition of one unit of uranium. I don't want to get into the details, but you can find it in Wikipedia, very simple. And that's what enrichment is all about. Now, it's not that the Iranians cannot reach the level, the military grade level, which is about 95%. They can very easily. They already master the technology. And again, this is not part of the Israeli ambassador propaganda. if you doubt what I'm saying here, simply read the recent IAEA report, periodical reports about the Iranian nuclear program, where you will find all the necessary information about the current stage of the Iranian nuclear program. So it's not about the technology, it's not about whether they can. The only reason why they do not acquire the 95% percentage which is required for the production of a nuclear device, it's because they do understand the consequences and because the political decision was not made. The last stage is about delivery means. I think that for many years we knew about the Iranian Shihab missile programs, and it was very clear that in terms of range, they can reach Israel as they can reach any other capital in Europe. And by the way, this is something that also needs to be understood. Their missile can hit any target in Europe, not just in the Middle East. And yes, they did fire since April about between 400 to 500 ballistic missiles, and they have more. They have a limited number of ballistic missiles, but they have enough to, to fire towards Israel. I want to say before opening, our meeting for your questions, also to say something about friendship. If there is one thing that I learned since I assumed my responsibilities here as an ambassador, is not all who presented themselves as our friends were, in the end of the day, discovered or, were there for us in a time of need. I said it many times, I'm not too shy to say it. Canberra can be very cold, and not just in the winter. And it's not just about the temperature. And I think that this is something that is very important to remember, that not all that show friendly faces are our Israel real friends. And there is one thing to say privately, but you know where I stand, I'm a good friend, and then publicly to say different things. And for me, this is very disappointing. It's very sad, because I did believe, and I was hoping, that we have more friends than we actually have these days. And this is really very sad. Last but not least, it's always very moving for me to be here after what I shared with you about friendship. So the community, you were always here and there for us. To receive telephone calls from many of you just to ask how we feel in Canberra, to have the possibility to consult with you about matters that we are concerned about, is something that I personally am not taking for granted. And for that, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Toda.
We've got time for some questions.
Okay, questions. You don't have to, by the way. Please.
Ambassador, a couple of years ago, you were... That's it, thank you. A couple of years ago, you were in my office at Bialik College, and when you heard that we were going to send a year level to an Arab country, you were able to call the ambassador on the phone straight away and be the shadchan for us with that ambassador. Are you still able to have those relationships since October the 7th?
Yeah. You know that I think it was 2 weeks before October the 7th event that was held in the embassy, I was invited by the European Union ambassador to address them. The reason why I received the invitation was that the Palestinian representative reached out to them and convinced them to host him. So they, as Europe does from time to time, try to balance it. So they invited me. So one of the things that I shared with them is that I was talking about at least my understanding of friendship. and my expectations from them as colleagues, not as official representative of their states. And to much of my disappointment, apart of one ambassador, since October the 7th, none of them found the time even to just simply to call me and to say, "Hi Amir, how are you, how you feel?" As for your specific question, it was really very encouraging to see a representative of a very important Arab state attending our October the 7th event. And usually the challenge is to avoid the representative of other Arab countries, not necessarily the ones that we have diplomatic relationship, not to run away whenever they see me in a diplomatic function. That's usually the case. They simply, and this is something that I find very difficult to understand, because in the end of the day, we are, ordinary people. Yes, we represent our countries, but let's not bring, our country's politics to Canberra. Here we are colleagues. We can speak to each other. We can talk to each other. But, many of my Arab colleagues with whom we do not have diplomatic relationship prefer simply to distance themselves and to, run away. Please.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the history that you've given us this afternoon. But you did sort of gloss over what went wrong on October the 7th.
Everything went wrong. And I think that I'll say two things. I was in Israel on October the 7th when Israel was attacked. I remember I woke up to the sound of sirens. I was staying at one of the hotels in Tel Aviv. And I thought that this is either a malfunction or another round of violence which we experienced for so many years. And then when in the social medias, I started to receive all these terrible images, I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I think that I still, and even though I visited Kibbutz Be'eri just last July, I visited Kibbutz Nir Oz, that is still pretty much in the same condition as it was found on October the 8th, once the IDF entered the kibbutz. And I visited also the Nova Festival site. I still cannot really understand what the Israelis were going through, what really happened there. This is a time for us to win the war. I'm sure we will win the war. And I believe that there will be a time that we will investigate exactly, the events that took place on the 7th and the events that led October the 7th to happen. Some of our dignitaries already took responsibilities, such as the head of the IDI, Aaron Khaliva, Major General. The chief of the general staff immediately took upon himself the responsibilities, as well as others. I believe that once a commission of inquiry will be established, we will have a better understanding of what happened, how did it happen. But I think that you shouldn't have any doubts that, at least not from my side, that I see October the 7th as a total failure in every possible mean of the world. Danny.
We're about to have Richard Marles speak to us. I'm just wondering, has the Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister reached out in any way since in the last few months? I mean, we just had a resolution that didn't go through and so on in Parliament. Has anything warmed up at all?
You know, when I'm talking about diplomacy, no, listen, no, really. I believe that the essence of diplomacy is the contacts that you make, the contacts that you cultivate and maintain, and the ability to pick up the phone in no matter when and to receive an answer. I think that, and really modestly, and I don't want you to misunderstand me, in that respect, Australia is a heaven. Is a heaven for foreign diplomats and a heaven for Israeli diplomats. It doesn't mean that we always get the answers that we want, but without exceptional, all our calls are usually answered and very quickly. And very quickly. That's, you ask about the foreign minister, so she attended October the 7th event. She spoke to me just before the recent United Nations General Assembly resolution. She called me in advance to let me know how Australia is going to vote. Richard Marles, I don't need to wait for, with all due respect, to your event in order to meet with him. It happens that we have a scheduled meeting later this week. We have periodical meetings. I just texted him and he responded. That's also true about Prime Minister Albanese. And Michelle is here. She can tell you that whenever the parliament sits, Amir is running in the corridor. So people are very receptive. And this is very important. And we should not, take it from the government, despite the differences that we may have. And I have lots of respect for their accessibility, their willingness to meet with me and to talk with me. Because I truly believe in the importance of keeping all channels of communication open. And this is important. And I know that they are also very receptive to telephone calls from members from the community, which is very good. There is an ongoing exchange, which is independent to the contacts that, I have in Canberra.